Hello all, I'm your host, WitchiMichi, and this is our first ever segment of Multiclass Mayhem. A segment where I tell you my take on how to optimize your character for very specific purposes. Where others min-max for damage output, we min-max for build flavor and storytelling to make you feel like you're becoming your intended character using your stats and mechanics. This week, we're covering what's certainly one of my favorite builds, if not my outright favorite, the Investigator. Okay, so a lot of people have commented on the fact that Inquisitive Rogue is not the best investigator despite being basically Holmesian in design and intended flavor. From dungeon dudes to the far reaches of Reddit, people truly want to be Sherlock Holmes in some of their games. If, like me, your DM doesn't ban any official source material short of the racist origins of some of the game's species, you can build the ultimate investigator using zero homebrew and not so much as a morsel of rule breaking from official Wizards of the Coast's published books, even if one of them is a collaboration with Critical Role, and even if the wording of one of the rules is one of the most contested things that rules lawyers complain about. It was all still published by Wizards, so we're using it. Because of that poorly worded, almost legalese style technicality, your DM might let something slide, and there will be a lot of numbers in this build because of it, as it's about throwing up the highest possible investigation, perception, and insight scores on the board, and your DM might not let you get away with ignoring something in Chapter 7 of the PHB for the fact that two class features are named two different things, and effectively do the same thing in doubling the numbers. Side note, we'll be using race and species interchangeably here. I prefer species, but Wizards was still using race when most of this was written, so most of this will say racial feature instead of species feature or species trait. I apologize, we fix this commonly addressed fan issue in everything we publish, but Wizards doesn't plan on fixing it until their supposedly dead 1D&D that they're now calling the new 5e when that comes out, but not before. Alright. So the first thing you're going to want to pick up is the Race Palette Elf from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. This is a patently unfair start to this build, unfair to your DM, giving you a racial feature of automatic advantage on insight and investigation, the two most important skills of your Holmesian genius. According to most sources, advantage amounts to a +5 on average. But while that kind of matters, it's going to level out here to mean that you will almost never roll a nat 1, which is the important part. The likelihood of rolling doubles on a fair d20 are almost astronomical, and as long as you don't gain disadvantage, thus canceling your advantage, and then crit fail on top of that, you're going to do just fine. It also grants you a +1 to intelligence, the spells sleep, light, and most importantly, invisibility, which can be cast on yourself once every long rest. From species alone, you are now an automatic powerhouse of an investigator. You can sneak into rooms where no one without true sight can see you. You have advantage on insight checks as you eavesdrop on their conversations. You'll take the investigator background from Van Rippen's Guide to Ravenloft, and apart from a very loose up to interpretation background feature that basically says you have honed the ability to get answers out of people, and that law enforcement has one of two very strong opinions about you, positive or negative, you gain proficiency in two of the following three skills: insight, investigation, or perception. As proficiency never stacks, it actually doesn't matter which two you take as long as you take two of these three, because we're headed straight for your class and we're going to pick up the third one there. Now, starting out with your stats, you're going to want to make sure that your dexterity and wisdom are both at or above a 13, though they don't have to be your highest scores. This is pretty easy if you use point buy instead of rolling, but it's not necessary for me to explain point buy this week. You're going to be smacked in the face with enough numbers as it is. I'll explain it next week when we cover the Dashing Duelist. If you have 3 stats rolled above a 13, I would put Investigation first, then Dex, then Wisdom, but you definitely have to have Dex and Wisdom at or above 13. So if you can only choose 2 and wait to boost your intelligence at a later time, choose those 2. First things first, we're obviously going to go Rogue. Why Rogue first and not the other 2 and 1 level dips we're about to take into Tasha's optional Ranger and Twilight Cleric respectively? Simple. Expertise. First we stop off in your proficiencies. Pick up whichever one you left out from your background. Like I said, it didn't matter which 2 you chose, you still get the 3rd as an option from your class. Then take Sleight of Hand, Persuasion, and Deception as your remaining proficiencies. We'll talk about why not Stealth in a second. Now, Expertise. Take it in Insight and Investigation. You've now got at least a +4 to Insight and Investigation, and with the advantage given by your race, that's more akin to a +9 on average, and almost never getting a natural 1. Unless your DM for some reason imposes disadvantage, making it more of a straight roll. Keep in mind, this is still at level 1. And you also get Sneak Attack, which rounds out your utility in combat to do some extra damage. Here's the reason you absolutely needed early Dex and Wiz at or above a 13. At level 2, we start a 2-level dip into Tasha's revised version of the Ranger class. While most of this can be done with Feats, it's not the optimal way. The first thing you get is a single Ranger proficiency. This is where you take Stealth, and why you didn't at level 1. You are now an investigative skill monkey with medium armor and martial weapons proficiencies. But wait, there's more. You also get the replacement for favorite enemy called Favored Foe. Allowing you to focus on an enemy, you hit and deal extra damage, continuing to round out your combat damage utility like you do with your Sneak Attack. But the most important class feature of all you get? Canny. You choose 1 skill, and your proficiency bonus is doubled for that skill. Now this is the money/contested rules as written thing. If you choose your already expertised out investigation, some say it is a waste because it doesn't stack. Some say it does. Now rules is written it cannot stack because of oddly worded phrases in both the features themselves and somewhere in Chapter 7 of the Player's Handbook where it mentions that things with this function can't stack, but this is contested all over the internet as ambiguous because canny and expertise are not technically the same thing, given they have different names, and frankly, I think Wizards could have just called this expertise, added the language part as a different feature, and then been done with it, but they didn't. And the wording is truly odd when read literally. Odd, but not ambiguous. In favor of the rules lawyers out there, it's less ambiguous and more just written in what amounts to the D&D equivalent of legalese. But we have a plan whichever way your DM rules on this. Your DM may rule against it, which is a +9 on average with your advantage. They may rule in the middle ground, meaning it's a +11 on average with your advantage. Or they may rule that because it's written in word salad that you get a sweet +13 with your advantage on average. This is your investigation skill at level 2. Just level 2. If your DM rules against stacking entirely, just take canny and stealth for a +4 to that check when you become invisible. Also, perhaps partially less useful at the moment, canny grants 2 more languages of your choice. But we will make that matter in a minute, so choose 2 that definitely mean something to either your character or potentially to the campaign. Your second level in Ranger grants you spellcasting, granting you 2 first-level spells off of the Ranger spell list known, and 2 first-level spell slots in order to cast them. You're going to take Detect Magic and Detect Poison and Disease, solving Dungeon Dude's gripe about not having Detect Magic, adding another detection spell, and you've still taken no feats yet. No Magic Initiate, no Ritual Caster. You're a magical detective now, so get detecting. Your second level in Ranger also grants you a fighting style. You're going to take Blind Fighting from Tasha's. This will grant you that little extra bit of, if you come too close, I am smart enough to calculate where you are and beat your ass Holmesian style awesomeness, even while blinded or in magical darkness. It's like getting too close to John Wick or Matt Murdock or someone who knows every disarming move from Krav Maga. And with the combination of blind fighting and the light cantrip, you don't 100% need dark vision. But we're doing dips, and this is about investigating for most of the game more than combat at high levels, so let's abandon Elusive, which Rogue would give us an 18th level, and take a single level of Twilight Cleric, especially if your DM didn't ban it at your table. I know some tables do, and to those DMs I say the following words: get good, bitch. We now have 300 feet of dark vision and can magically share that dark vision for up to 1 hour, and Vigilant Blessing, which you can use to give yourself or an ally advantage on its next initiative at a range of touch. You also get 3 cleric cantrips. For battle purposes, you're going to take Sacred Flame, which increases in damage with your level, which is not specified to be your cleric level, just your in-game level, which arguably means on your next level up, it will increase from a 1d8 cantrip to a 2d8 cantrip, and for investigations, you are going to take Thaumaturgy, which will allow you to intimidate or frighten suspects into perhaps revealing truths that they otherwise would not have, and Mending, which will allow you to repair broken or torn clues, which is a really fun little thing for you and your DM to play with. For your 2 cleric spell slots, keep handy Detect Evil and Good or Command. Command can be useful in terms of telling someone to confess. Detect Evil and Good obviously is another great detection spell if your DM chooses to make it matter. Let's review. We've now taken 1 level of Rogue, 2 levels of Ranger, and 1 level of Twilight Cleric. We've gained advantage on initiative rolls to any creature, including ourselves, at a range of touch, and advantage on investigation and insight checks. Those advantages come to an average of +9 to investigation with a +4 to stealth, or up to a +13 on average to investigation with a +2 to stealth, and all of that with a +9 to insight on average. Blind fighting within 10 feet, proficiency if not canny, aka expertise in stealth, and proficiency in sleight of hand, perception, and persuasion. We've got 300 feet of dark vision with the ability to share it for an hour, the ability to turn ourselves invisible, the ability to cast sleep and light, 3 cleric cantrips, 1 for battle, 2 for investigation, detect evil and good, detect poison and disease, detect magic, mending, thaumaturgy, command, a battle cantrip that scales with every level, arguably better than Eldritch Blast scales without its invocations, aka Sacred Flame, 4 spell slots, and 2 extra languages. And we're barely in a 4th level game at this point. Now we're back in the Rogue, heading hard down the Inquisitive archetype path. Rogue is an interesting class because it grants you an extra ability score increase at level 10, but classes other than Fighter as 6 don't. So in multiclassing, you haven't really missed out on having as many opportunities for feats and ability score improvements as the rest of your party as long as you continue your campaign to Rogue level 10, aka level 13 for the game. At Rogue level 2, you gain a cunning action like all rogues, and your proficiency bonus that's going up with character rather than class increases to +3, meaning expertise is a +6, and stacked expertise with canny, if allowed, would be a +12. If your DM allows you to take steady aim, at Rogue level 3 you gain steady aim. It's not relevant to investigation, but adds combat utility for your ranged attacks, which could be useful in tandem with your Sacred Flame or throwing your daggers. And at this level, you start really buckling down on being an Inquisitive Rogue as your archetype.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition!
We're now in a level 6 campaign, have everything listed before, and are about to blast into the wide world of basically being Sherlock or Enola Holmes with the senses of Superman and the incredibly minor favor of a Twilight god. You gain Ear for Deceit, which means any roll of 7 or lower for insight checks, specifically against lying, would now be considered an 8, which means since you have advantage and expertise, you can never roll lower than a 14 total, and on average, you never roll lower than about a 19. Eye for detail, which means you can take a bonus action to make a perception check on which you have proficiency to find a hidden creature or object, or an investigation check on which you either have plus 17 from staff expertise, canny, and advantage, or a plus 11 from expertise and advantage to find hidden clues. That's right, you can now use your bonus action to investigate while the battle rages on around you. After shanking someone for sneak attack damage as your action, and worst of all, for those attempting to cover something up by starting a fight, you're not only good, but great at investigating mid-battle. You also gain insightful fighting. As a bonus action, you can effectively do that pre-calculation part of Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes, and it's your insight versus their deception. Remember, on average, your insight is plus 11 due to species, automatic advantage, and your expertise, and if your DM allows it, technically your ear for deceit that you just gained could apply, at least rules as written, meaning on average, you never roll lower than a 19. This is up to a certain amount of interpretation, as the ear for deceit clearly implies hearing someone lie, but as the rogue gains some daredevil-like senses later on by mapping using their hearing, I would argue if it doesn't apply instantly to avoid a fake out from your enemy while fighting, it does apply the moment you get blind sense. If you succeed, you can use sneak attack against the target, doing extra damage, even if you don't have advantage on your attack. This effect lasts for 1 minute, meaning 10 turns, or until you successfully use it against the target. You can miss multiple times, but as long as it's within 1 minute, you will hit.
Physical recovery 6 weeks. Full psychological recovery 6 months.
At Rogue Level 4, aka Level 7 for the campaign itself, you have the option for an ability score improvement or a feat. Again, some DMs get bitchy about feats, but they're official and most DMs allow them. So, I'm going to go against what would be smart here in terms of scaling your level to make you a better investigator or fighter using stats, and instead tell you to take the Keen Mind feat, for which you receive a +1 to intelligence, meaning at worst you sacrificed half of an ability score improvement anyway, and you get more mechanics to make you feel like a super genius for your trouble. With this feat, you now know how long until the next sunrise or sunset, for a little more of that Twilight Cleric energy. You always know which direction is north, and you have an eidetic memory for an entire in-game month. You now remember everything said or seen in your presence for that entire time. Don't use this to be a pain in the ass. Be a note taker, or team up with the note taker, or record your sessions and rewatch them. Your DM is not here to be your eidetic memory unless it's something that they choose to make clear is your use of this later on. And P.S. if you're the DM, make use of your players' cool shit. Don't be that guy in either direction. This is Holmesian Perfect Recall, and you get to use it to be a genius at the table, so don't use it to abuse your DM, and if you're the DM, don't ignore it to railroad your players. At Rogue's 5th level, your 8th overall, you get Uncanny Dodge to avoid damage on a success, or take half damage on a failure on attacks that you can see as a reaction. At your 6th level in Rogue, you get another 2 skills to which you can add expertise, and this is in tandem with another proficiency bonus point, meaning expertise at this level will turn what would have been coming up into a +4 proficiency into a +8 expertise. Take this in your Thieves' Tools in case you need to break in places to investigate. Doors are the absolute worst, and take the other in Perception because, well, duh. Perception, Investigation, and Insight are the bread and butter of your investigator build, and you now have expertise in all three. At Rogue level 7, you get Evasion to have, on a failure, or negate, on a success, area of effect damage, anytime you have to make a dexterity save. At Rogue level 8, you balance the missed opportunity to take an ability score improvement at level 4 by taking yet another feat. Observant. Observant is great because first, you get a sweet +1 to wisdom or intelligence. Pump that directly into intelligence to add more to the stat you already were headed into with your last feat, or pump it into wisdom if you're in need of an even number to get that +1 to your other modifier. Observant also gives you a straight +5 to perception and investigation. This means at minimum you're rolling with a +13 to perception and +18 to investigation, with a maximum as high as +26 to investigation if your DM allowed your canny to stack with your expertise way back. The +5 is not advantage, it's just a bonus, so this effect stacks no matter what. You also learn to read lips, so now you know Common, at least 3 other languages, and Thieves' Cant. You can see 300 feet even in the dark, and read the lips of anyone speaking who faces you, if they're speaking a language that you understand, and your chances are pretty good, though not perfect, of that being the case. And if by some chance there's a wizard in your party who casts tongues on you, then chances are actually perfect, and no one around you better talk any shit and let you see you can read anyone's lips anytime. Hint hint, DMs, organize them using this to make them work together. It's a cool-ass tag team thing. At Rogue's 9th level, you get Steady Eye from your subclass, granting you advantage on any perception or investigation check. This doesn't stack with previous advantage on investigation, but it does grant it on perception, making that bonus on average +18 to perception. At Rogue's 10th level, you gain an ability score improvement. If you want to be faster and stabbier, put it in dexterity. Your party can thank you later for the combat utility you gained by sacrificing your big dreams of being the smartest investigator ever. But if you want to be even better at investigating, depending on how you rolled initially, pump your 2 points into wisdom or intelligence. But definitely don't neglect wisdom on these next 2 ASIs, because it's going to come in really handy in tandem with another of your skills, especially if it's important to you that your DM allows you to use absolutely everything cool about your character. This also comes with a +1 to proficiencies, meaning +2 to expertises. And depending on where your DM allowed you to put it, possibly a +2 or +4 to canny. Meaning, for your big 3, you're looking at an average of minimum +20 perception, +20 investigation, +20 to insight, with a chance to be much higher in investigation if the DM allowed the original stacking rule fudge. At your 11th level in Rogue, you gain Reliable Talent. You can now roll no lower than a 10 on anything in which you are proficient. Anything lower than a 10 is a 10. Sleight of Hand, 10. Stealth, 10. Persuasion, 10. Investigation, 10. Insight, 10. Even Deception, 10. Rules is written this applies to natural ones, so anything you had previous advantage on where you could have, however astronomically, rolled a nat 1, even with this advantage applied, to make it a straight roll, it's now a 10, no cap. That means on average you're not rolling lower than a 30 on perception, insight, or investigation.
What do you see?
Everything. That is my curse.
At the Rogue's 12th level, when the rest of your party is at 15, unless they also multiclassed, you gain another ASI. Put it where you need it most. You don't need charisma, John, when is Sherlock Holmes ever socially adequate? Seriously, don't make me get the spray bottle, I will hurt your feelings. At your lucky 13th level in Rogue, you gain Unerring Eye, which means, as an action, you sense the presence of illusions, shape changers not in their original form, and other magic designed to deceive the senses within 30 feet of you. Combine this with your blind fighting to be radar for invisible creatures committing these vicious felonies within 30 feet. Combine it with your massive 30-plus checks to find clues, and ultimately combine that with mending to put those clues back together, etc. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, minimum of once, which is why I said not to neglect wisdom. At 14th level in Rogue, you gain Blind Sense, which you would think negates your need for blind fighting, but no. First, it requires you to be able to hear. Second, the way it's worded, you are simply aware of a creature's location. It doesn't say that you can actually see them. Rules as written, and it doesn't put a stipulation on the creature not hiding behind cover, meaning you're aware whether or not they're hiding. This actually works in perfect harmony with Honoring Eye and Blind Fighting. Let me explain. So, say there's an invisible creature within 30 feet of you. You move in the direction you feel most strongly that the deceptive magic is coming from, and at 10 feet, if you can hear, you know that it is in fact a creature that is behind cover, and when you come around said cover, you can actually see the invisible creature. This is a fantastic stacking of 3 abilities that your DM should feel really cool about throwing at you in order for you to use them. This effectively gives you enough radar to avoid being surprised at any point while conscious. It's not impossible to get the jump on you, but it's really difficult if you're looking out for surprise attacks. So, apart from a boost to initiative, you now have very little use for one other feat, which could have helped with this build, which was Alert. And as you took the level in Twilight Cleric, you already have its equivalent with Vigilant Blessing, because Advantage, on average, is about a +5, and Alert gives you a straight +5 to Initiative, so now you have all of the perks of Alert without having to forego more ability score increases by taking another feat. But if you want a +10, you do you. This stacks. I think it's a bad idea if you want to survive, but who am I to stop you?
I'm vengeance.
Maybe you rolled all 8 teams for stats, I don't know your life. At your 15th rogue level, you gain Slippery Mind, giving you proficiency in wisdom saving throws. So even if someone tries to dominate you mentally, you can pull that Bruce Wayne shit and just ignore Poison Ivy's spores or Scarecrow's fear gas or Joker's toxin. At your 16th level in Rogue, you're in a 19th level campaign. At this point, you know which of your 3 core stats is going to be the most useful against the kinds of things your DM throws at you, unless they're a total douche. So put your ability score improvement where it'll do you the most good and keep on keeping on. At 17th level, you made it to a 20th level campaign. Congratulations on not having scheduling conflicts, the entire campaign not imploding from player conflicts, or one of the 8 billion other issues that kill campaigns before they ever get to this level. For your efforts, your 17th level in Rogue brings you your Subclasses capstone ability. Eye for Weakness. This is particularly useful against the big baddie, as your sneak attack damage, which would have been stuck at 9d6, now increases by 3d6 to a total of 12d6 damage, topping out at 2d6 higher than you would have had you gone with another of Rogue's subclasses all the way to level 20, which would have topped out at Rogue's standard 10d6. Now, other people will say, well, you don't get the Identify spell with this build, how are you the ultimate investigator without the Identify spell? And to that I say, D&D is a party-based game. Having one singular thing allows you to team up with another member of your party in a meaningful Watson-like capacity, creating a gap where they feel needed at the table in your investigation. If you've watched virtually any version of Sherlock Holmes, the Holmes reference in question works with a team, sometimes goes to a medical examiner, like in Sherlock, relies on their subordinates to do hospital testing, like in the show House, or relies on research and forensic testing from someone else, like they do in Psych. If you want the real Holmesian experience, I say leave Identify fully alone. Don't pick up Ritual Caster. Don't do any of that silly stuff that will down your ability score increases. You still need some combat utility in order to survive. This is D&D, and your party can't carry you the whole game. Or they're gonna get annoyed that a rogue, who jumps in and out of combat, isn't putting those huge sneak attack numbers up like a rogue would do. You have to let other people play at the table. Identify as a sort of, hey, can you help me with this? It's the bread and butter of how you pull at least one more teammate into these investigations. All of you are main characters in this story, and while you're Sherlock and Nola, Bruce Wayne, McHolmesy Pants, they might be Geralt, Van Helsing, Wizard, McGhost Slayer. And while you have a storyline with a rival sibling who works for the government and an unknown Moriarty who turns out to be the party's favorite NPC, they have to hunt monsters without becoming one, and discover the secret of their long-forgotten past, eventually facing off with a capitalist vampiric dictator incel who was teamed up with your Moriarty in a league of supervillain secret boy band Brohim awfulness all along. You're all main characters. This just allows at least 2 main characters to work together at the table toward a common goal. So yes, I say, leave Identify for another party member or an NPC who you have to go to, so that you can get that sweet, sweet roleplay moment where they figure out what the object is, and you deduce why the object was there in the first place and what it all means. That's right, the party member with the Identify spell aids in your Holmesian epiphany moment. And as the 11th Doctor says, what's the point of being brilliant if no one is around to see you do it? So go out there, unmask some villains, and solve some mysteries, gang. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Please comment below any type of character you'd like to see me build out to the best of my ability using canon stuff, or tell me how wrong I am about this build, or about how poorly worded that whole expertise and canny can't stack thing is. And of course, rang-a-dang, that little notification bell to stay up to date with all our latest videos, and we'll see you next week for more mayhem.